September 23rd, 1942. The city of Stalingrad. Temperature, 28 degrees Celsius, but it feels like hell itself. A German Wehrmacht officer crouches behind the rubble of what was once a department store, scanning the devastated landscape through his binoculars. His platoon has orders to advance 3 blocks and secure a strategic position overlooking the Volga River. Intelligence suggests minimal Soviet resistance. Most offenders have been pushed back or eliminated. His men number 40, well-trained infantry supported by machine gun teams. The officer adjusts his binoculars one final time. A single 7.62 x 54 mmR bullet, fired from approximately 250 meters away, strikes him directly through the temple. He collapses instantly, binoculars clattering onto broken concrete. The shot came from somewhere in the endless maze of destroyed buildings, shattered walls, and smoking ruins, but his men can't identify the source. No telltale muzzle flash. No echo to trace through the urban canyon. Just death arriving silently from the burning city. Over the next 40 minutes, 6 more German soldiers fall. Each time they try to advance. Each time they attempt to retrieve their dead. Each time they think they've identified the shooter's position and move to flank it. 6 more bodies added to Stalingrad's countless dead. When the survivors finally retreat, abandoning their objective and their fallen comrades, they report encountering something they've never faced before. Not a machine gun nest. Not an artillery strike. Not even a sniper team. One man, a 27-year-old former shepherd from the Ural Mountains who would, over the next 4 months, personally eliminate 225 German soldiers and become the most celebrated sniper in Soviet history. His name was Vasily Grigorievich Zaitsev. The Germans would come to call him Der Geist von Stalingrad, the ghost of Stalingrad. This is his story. And every single detail you're about to hear is verified historical fact, documented in Soviet military archives, German war diaries, and eyewitness testimony from both sides of the most brutal urban battle in human history. To understand how Vasily Zaitsev became one of history's deadliest snipers, you need to understand the Ural Mountains and what they teach those who grow up in them. Born March 23, 1915, in the village of Yeleninskoye in the Ural Mountains region, Vasily grew up in a landscape that was unforgiving, beautiful, and deadly. The Urals weren't as extreme as Siberia, but they were close. Winters dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius. Summers were brief. The forests were dense with predators, wolves, bears, lynx, and the survival of rural families often depended on hunting. Vasily's grandfather, Andrei Zaitsev, was a professional hunter and trapper. In a region where hunting wasn't sport but survival, Andrei was legendary. He could track a wolf through fresh snow, could call deer during mating season, could read weather patterns days in advance. Most importantly, he could shoot. Vasily's education began at age 5. Andrei gave him a single-shot rifle, ancient heavy, with iron sights that had been hand-filed perfection over decades of use. The rule was simple. Vasily would receive exactly 3 bullets for each hunting trip. No more. Ammunition was expensive. Every shot had to count. The first bullet feeds a family, Andrei told him. The second bullet corrects your mistake. The third bullet means you failed, and we go home hungry. A good hunter needs only 1 bullet. A great hunter makes that bullet count even when conditions are impossible. By age 12, Vasily was hunting alone. Deer, elk, wolves, anything that threatened livestock or could provide meat. He learned to move silently through dense forest, to read animal tracks in snow and mud, to estimate range by eye, to account for wind that swirled unpredictably through mountain valleys. Most critically, he learned patience. Andrei's teaching method was brutal in its simplicity. He would take young Vasily into the forest before dawn, position in a hide, and tell him to wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes all day. If Vasily moved, made noise, or took a shot at anything less than a perfect target, the hunt was over and they went home with nothing. An impatient hunter is a hungry hunter, Andrei would say. The animal doesn't know you're there. Time means nothing to the forest. You can wait 6 hours or 6 minutes. The animal doesn't care. But the moment you become impatient, you make mistakes. Mistakes mean you starve. Vasily absorbed these lessons with the intensity of a child whose family's survival depended on his skill. By his teenage years, He was bringing home game regularly. His success rate was extraordinary, rarely needing more than one shot per hunt, almost never using all 3 bullets. He also developed an unusual specialty, long-range shooting. Most hunters in the Urals preferred close shots, 50 to 100 meters, where accuracy was easier and ammunition wasn't wasted. But Vasily practiced at longer ranges, sometimes 200 or 300 meters. He learned how wind affected bullet trajectory in mountain valleys, how temperature changed powder burn rates, how to compensate for uphill and downhill angles. His grandfather noticed this obsession and encouraged it. The hunter who can kill at 300 meters has advantages the close-range hunter doesn't. You can choose your moment. The animal doesn't hear you, doesn't smell you, doesn't know death is coming. This is the highest form of hunting, complete control. This philosophy, that the perfect shot comes from complete control of the situation, would define Vasily's approach to combat sniping years later. In 1937, at age 22, Vasily was conscripted into the Soviet Navy. He served in the Pacific Fleet, working as a clerk in the accounts department. It was boring, bureaucratic work that had nothing to do with hunting or shooting. He completed his service in 1939 and returned to the Urals, resuming his life as a hunter and woodsman. But in 1941, everything changed. Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union. June 22, 1941. 3 million German soldiers, supported by thousands of tanks and aircraft, crashed into the Soviet Union in the largest military invasion in human history. The initial German advance was catastrophic for the Soviets. Entire armies were encircled and destroyed. Cities fell within days. The Red Army, purge of experienced officers by Stalin's paranoia in the late 1930s, struggled to mount effective resistance. By September 1941, German forces were approaching Moscow itself. Vasily Zaitsev, like millions of Soviet men, volunteered for military service immediately after the invasion. He was assigned to the 1047th Rifle Regiment, 284th Rifle Division. His initial assignment, ordinary rifleman. His hunting experience and shooting skills were noted in his file, but not considered particularly relevant for modern industrial warfare. He spent the first year of the war in relatively quiet sectors, seeing limited combat. His division was held in reserve, training and preparing for eventual deployment. Vasily chafed at the inactivity. He'd volunteer to fight fascists, not to sit in training camps. By summer 1942, the strategic situation had evolved dramatically. The German summer offensive, Operation Blue, was driving deep into southern Russia toward the Caucasus oil fields. The city of Stalingrad, a major industrial center on the Volga River, became Hitler's obsession, partly for strategic value, partly because it bore Stalin's name. The battle for Stalingrad began in August 1942. German forces, led by General Friedrich Paulus's Sixth Army, attacked the city with overwhelming force. The Luftwaffe conducted massive bombing raids that killed an estimated 40,000 civilians and reduced much of the city to rubble in days. Soviet defenders, under the command of General Vasily Chukov, were pushed back to a narrow strip of land along the western bank of the Volga River. The situation was desperate. Stalin issued his famous Order No. 227, not one step back. Retreat was forbidden. Soldiers who fell back without orders would be shot by their own blocking detachments. On September 17, 1942, Vasily Zaitsev's division was ferried across the Volga River under German artillery fire to reinforce Stalingrad's defenders. What he saw when he landed was unlike anything he could have imagined. Stalingrad, in September 1942, was apocalyptic. The city that had once housed nearly 500,000 people was now a landscape of total destruction. Buildings were reduced to skeletal frameworks. Streets were impassable canyons of rubble. Fires burned continuously, filling the air with thick, choking smoke. Bodies, German, Soviet, civilian, lay everywhere, often unburied for days or weeks. The fighting was unlike any warfare in history. This was a maneuver warfare on open steppes. This was close-quarters brutality in destroyed urban terrain. Battles were fought room to room, floor to floor, sometimes with enemies occupying different floors of the same building. Soldiers threw grenades into basements, fired through walls, engaged enemies at ranges measured in meters rather than hundreds of meters. The average life expectancy of a Soviet soldier arriving in Stalingrad was less than 24 hours. Vasily's division was immediately thrown into combat, defending a tractor factory on the city's northern edge. For 3 weeks, he fought as an ordinary rifleman, brutal, chaotic fighting where survival was more luck than skill. He saw his friends killed by artillery, machine gun fire, grenades, and collapsing buildings. He killed German soldiers at close range, often in hand-to-hand fighting. But Vasily noticed something during these 3 weeks, something that would change his role, and potentially the battle itself. German soldiers were excellent fighters in conventional combat. They had better training, better equipment, better tactical coordination. In open terrain or structured battles, they consistently outperformed Soviet troops. But in Stalingrad's ruins, their advantages diminished. The urban rubble neutralized German armor and artillery superiority. The close quarters negated their superior tactical training. And Vasily noticed something else. German soldiers were predictable. They established patterns. Officers would observe from the same positions at similar times. Machine gun teams would occupy the same nests. Soldiers would use the same routes through rubble to rotate positions. This predictability, which made sense from a military efficiency standpoint, created vulnerabilities a skilled hunter could exploit. During a lull in fighting on October 10, 1942, Vasily approached his company commander, Captain Petrov, with a proposal. "I can kill Germans more effectively as a sniper than as a rifleman," Vasily said. "Give me a scope rifle, a spotter, and freedom to operate independently. I'll deliver results." Petrov was skeptical. The Soviet army had sniper programs, but they were small and not considered particularly important. Most commanders preferred massed rifle fire and bayonet charges to specialized sharpshooters. But Petrov also recognized that conventional tactics weren't working in Stalingrad's meat grinder. Casualties were unsustainable. They needed new approaches. "You have 3 days," Petrov told him. "Show me results, and I'll support your sniper operations. Fail, and you return to rifle duties." Vasily was given a Mosin-Nagant M1891/30 rifle with a PU 3.5x scope, the standard Soviet sniper rifle. It wasn't fancy, but it was reliable, accurate to 800 meters, and Vasily knew the Mosin-Nagant intimately from his hunting days. He also requested a spotter, Nikolai Kulikov, a fellow soldier from the Urals who had similar hunting experience. Kulikov would use binoculars to help identify targets, call wind adjustments, and watch for threats while Vasily focused through the scope. On October 11, 1942, Vasily Zaitsev began his career as a combat sniper. Vasily's hunting experience gave him immediate advantages that formally trained military snipers often lacked. Most military snipers were trained in range estimation, ballistics, and shooting technique, technical skills that could be taught in a few weeks. But Vasily had something different. Hunter's instincts developed over decades. He understood how to read terrain for concealment and fields of fire. He knew how to remain motionless for hours despite discomfort. He recognized patterns in animal and now human behavior that revealed predictability. Most importantly, he understood patience. Military snipers often felt pressure to take shots, to justify their specialized role, to produce kills quickly. Vasily had no such pressure. He'd spent entire days in the Ural forest waiting for a single perfect shot at a deer. He could wait just as long for a German officer. His first kill came on October 11th, around 0800 hours. Vasily and Kulikov had positioned themselves in the ruins of a destroyed apartment building overlooking a German-held sector. Through a scope, Vasily observed German activity for over an hour, saying nothing, just watching, learning patterns. He noticed a German officer who would emerge from a basement bunker every hour or so to survey the front lines. The officer was cautious. He would look around carefully before exposing himself. But he always emerged from the same entrance, always stood in approximately the same spot, always spent about 30 seconds observing before returning to cover. Predictable. Vasily waited for the officer's next appearance. When the German emerged and began his routine observation, Vasily was already aimed at the exact spot. The officers had appeared in his scope's crosshairs. Vasily compensated for the slight crosswind, controlled his breathing, and squeezed the trigger. One shot. The officer dropped instantly. German soldiers rushed to help their fallen commander, creating confusion and panic. Vasily could have taken additional shots, but he didn't. He learned from hunting that after the first shot, animals became alert and unpredictable. Better to wait, let the situation calm, then strike again when guards lowered. 2 hours later, a German soldier made the mistake of standing upright to throw a grenade at Soviet positions. Vasily shot him mid-throw. The grenade fell among German positions, causing additional chaos. By the end of October 11th, Vasily had 4 confirmed kills, enemy soldiers whose bodies could be verified by Soviet observers. 4 kills in one day was exceptional, but what impressed Captain Petrov more was the psychological impact. German soldiers in that sector became cautious, hesitant. They stopped standing upright, stopped using predictable routes, stopped exposing themselves unnecessarily. An entire company of German infantry had been neutralized, not by killing all of them, but by creating fear of an invisible threat. Petrov gave Vasily permanent authorization to operate as a sniper. Over the following weeks, Vasily refined his technique, and his reputation grew among both Soviets and Germans. His approach combined traditional hunting methods with urban warfare adaptation, position selection. Unlike rural sniping, where you might shoot from 500-plus meters away, Stalingrad's rubble limited sight lines to 100 to 300 meters. Vasily chose positions that offered multiple covered routes for approach and withdrawal, good concealment from German observation, fields of fire covering German approach routes or positions that seemed too obvious. Germans often didn't check obvious spots, thinking no sniper would be foolish enough to use them. Camouflage and concealment. Vasily didn't just hide, he became part of the rubble. He would cover himself with debris, concrete, dust, and rubble, position himself in shadows where scope glint wouldn't be visible, use destroyed furniture, torn curtains, and building materials to create natural-looking concealment. Never shoot from the same position twice in consecutive days. Target selection. Vasily prioritized targets based on military value. Officers, identifiable by better uniforms, binoculars, maps. Artillery observers prevented German artillery from being directed accurately. Machine gunners reduced German suppressive fire capability. Other snipers eliminated counter-sniper threats. Regular infantry, only when high-value targets weren't available. Shooting discipline. Unlike some snipers who would take difficult shots to demonstrate skill, Vasily was ruthlessly practical. He only took shots he was confident he could make. He preferred shots at stationary targets over moving ones. He typically fired only 2 to 3 shots per position before relocating. He never shot just to increase his kill count. Every shot had tactical purpose. Psychological warfare. Vasily understood that the fear of snipers was often more valuable than the actual kills. He would sometimes deliberately miss by inches to spook targets. He would shoot soldiers retrieving bodies, creating fear of helping wounded. He would wait until Germans thought the sniper had left, then shoot again. He would target the same sector repeatedly until Germans refused to operate there. By early November 1942, Vasily's confirmed kill count exceeded 40. But more importantly, entire German units were becoming paralyzed by fear of the sniper. Intelligence reports noted that German soldiers were refusing to man observation posts, were delaying attacks, were requesting transfers from sectors where the sniper operated. The Germans began calling him Der Geist von Stalingrad, the ghost of Stalingrad. Soviet propaganda quickly seized on this, and Vasily became a hero of Soviet media. Pravda and Red Star newspapers ran stories about the humble shepherd who was killing Nazis by the dozen. His face appeared on posters. Radio broadcasts told his story. This fame would have unexpected consequences. German command, embarrassed by Soviet propaganda about Zaitsev and concerned about the tactical impact of Soviet snipers, decided to respond. They deployed their own elite snipers to Stalingrad with a specific mission: hunt and kill Soviet snipers, particularly Vasily Zaitsev. The most famous of these was supposedly Major Erwin Koenig, or Heinz Thorvald in some accounts, described as the head of a German sniper school at Zossen. The story, popularized by Soviet propaganda and later the 2001 film Enemy at the Gates, describes an epic duel between Zaitsev and Koenig over several days, culminating in Vasily killing the German master sniper. Here's where we need to be historically careful. The Koenig duel has been questioned by historians. German records don't confirm a Major Erwin Koenig, and some details seem too perfect for propaganda purposes. However, what is absolutely confirmed is that German counter-sniper operations intensified dramatically in November 1942, and Vasily did engage in sniper versus sniper duels. Whether or not Koenig specifically existed, the sniper war was very real. Vasily's memoir describes multiple encounters with German snipers during November 1942. One detailed account describes a 3-day engagement. Day 1. Vasily was operating in his usual sector when a shot from an unexpected angle nearly hit his spotter, Kulikov. The shot was too precise, too well placed to be random fire. Vasily immediately recognized professional work. A German sniper had entered his operating area. Rather than continue his mission, Vasily withdrew and spent the rest of the day observing, trying to identify the German's position. He saw nothing. The German was skilled, well-concealed, and patient. Day 2. Vasily and Kulikov established multiple false positions, spots that looked like good sniper hides, while actually observing from a different location. They hoped the German would reveal himself by shooting at these decoys. The German didn't take the bait. Clearly, he was experienced enough to recognize obvious traps. Around midday, Vasily spotted a glint, just a brief flash, from a position about 300 meters away in a destroyed office building. It might have been nothing, but Vasily's hunting instincts said otherwise. That position offered excellent fields of fire over Soviet areas. The glint appeared at the angle where morning sun would hit a scope lens. Vasily noted the position but didn't shoot. Not yet. Day 3. Vasily knew the German would be watching the obvious approaches and likely positions for Soviet snipers. So he did something unexpected. He positioned himself closer to German lines and Soviet lines, in rubble that Germans would assume was safely in their rear area. From this position, he had an angle on a suspected German sniper location that wouldn't be covered by the Germans' expected fields of observation. Around 0900 hours, Vasily saw movement, just a slight shift in the debris. Then, a helmet appeared briefly. The German was preparing to shoot, probably at a Soviet position. Vasily waited. The helmet disappeared. Then, minutes later, a head appeared, the German sniper, looking through a scope towards Soviet positions. One shot. The German sniper dropped. When Soviet soldiers later advanced and recovered the body, they confirmed it was a German sniper with a high-quality scoped rifle and extensive ammunition. Definitely a specialist, not an ordinary rifleman. Whether this was a legendary Koenig or simply one of many German snipers deployed to hunt Soviet sharpshooters, the engagement demonstrated Vasily's tactical sophistication. He'd outthought and outpositioned a skilled enemy who was specifically hunting him. As Vasily's reputation and success grew, Soviet command recognized an opportunity. In late November 1942, Vasily was temporarily pulled from frontline sniping to establish a sniper training school in Stalingrad. The logic was simple. One, Vasily Zaitsev was valuable, but dozens of snipers trained in his methods would be devastating. The school wasn't a formal building with classrooms. This was Stalingrad, where no building stood intact. Instead, Vasily conducted training in dugouts, destroyed basements, and relatively safe areas during lulls in fighting. His students included both men and women. The Soviet military, desperate for every capable soldier, had recruited female snipers extensively. Some of Vasily's best students were women who brought the same patience and attention to detail that made him effective. Vasily's training philosophy differed significantly from standard military sniper training. Standard military training focused on technical shooting skills, range estimation formulas, ballistics calculations, standard tactical procedures. Vasily's training focused on reading enemy behavior and patterns, patience and position discipline, hunting mindset and stalking techniques, urban terrain exploitation, psychological warfare. One of his key lessons: You're not trying to shoot every German you see. You're trying to make Germans afraid to be seen. Fear is more valuable than kills. He taught his students to think like hunters. Study your prey's habits. Understand what makes them feel safe. Then exploit those assumptions. Never rush a shot. The target will give you the opportunity if you wait. One perfect shot is worth 10 rush shots. He also emphasized survival. Never use the same position twice in a row. Always have multiple retreat routes planned. If something feels wrong, trust that instinct and withdraw. Your life is more valuable than any single kill. Survive to fight tomorrow. By December 1942, Vasily had trained dozens of snipers who deployed throughout Stalingrad. The combined effect of these trained sharpshooters was significant. German forces found themselves under constant sniper fire across multiple sectors, unable to move safely during daylight hours in many areas. The Zaitsev method became standard Soviet sniper doctrine, spreading beyond Stalingrad to other fronts. His emphasis on psychological warfare, patience, and hunters' instincts influenced Soviet sniper training for the remainder of the war. By January 1943, Vasily had been fighting in Stalingrad for 4 months. His confirmed kill count exceeded 200, an extraordinary number that made him one of the most successful snipers of the war. But the strain was severe. Stalingrad was unlike anything in his Ural hunting experience. In the mountains, he could hunt for a day and then return to warm shelter, hot food, and sleep. In Stalingrad, there was no such thing as off-duty. German attacks could come at any hour. Artillery fell randomly. Snipers had to remain alert constantly because German counter-snipers were always hunting. The cold was brutal, not as extreme as the Urals, but worse because there was no proper shelter. Soldiers slept in rubble, often in standing water or snow. Frostbite was common. Vasily, like many defenders, suffered from frost damage to his hands and feet. The psychological weight was also significant. Vasily had killed over 200 men, more than most soldiers would kill in entire wars. Each kill was personal in a way that artillery or machine gun fire wasn't. Through a scope, he saw their faces, saw them fall, saw their comrades' reactions. In his memoir, Vasily rarely discussed the psychological toll, but occasional comments reveal the strain. After the first 50, I stopped counting in my head. The numbers became meaningless. I focused on the mission, protecting my comrades, degrading German combat effectiveness. But late at night, in those rare moments of quiet, I would see faces through my scope. Not all of them, just certain ones. The young ones mainly. The ones who looked terrified even before I shot them. On January 22, 1943, a mortar shell exploded near Vasily's position. Shrapnel struck his face and eyes. The injury was serious. His vision was severely damaged, and there was concern he might be permanently blinded. He was evacuated across the Volga River to field hospitals for emergency treatment. His combat role in Stalingrad was over. His final confirmed kill count: 225 German soldiers killed between October 11, 1942 and January 22, 1943. A period of 103 days. That an average of 2.18 kills per day, sustained over more than 3 months of continuous combat operations. To put this in context, this was achieved in urban terrain with limited sight lines, using iron sights or low magnification optics, 3.5x scope, while under constant counter-sniper pressure, in one of the most brutal battles in human history, with no breaks, no rotations, no rest periods. No other sniper in Stalingrad, Soviet or German, approached this performance. Vasily's eye injuries required multiple surgeries. He was evacuated to Moscow for treatment by the Soviet Union's best ophthalmologists. The prognosis was uncertain. He might regain partial vision, or he might be permanently blind. While recovering, Vasily received visitors who recognized him as a national hero. Soviet propaganda had made him famous, and his story inspired millions of Soviet citizens during the darkest period of the war. He was awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union, the USSR's highest honor, for his service in Stalingrad. He also received the Order of Lenin and the Medal for the Defense of Stalingrad. But Vasily cared little about medals or recognition. His concern was whether he would see again, and whether he could return to combat if his vision recovered. The surgeries were partially successful. Vasily regained functional vision in one eye, though not to his pre-injury level. He could see well enough for daily life, but not well enough for the precision shooting that sniping required. His combat sniping career was over. However, the Soviet military still had important roles for him. In 1943 to 1944, Vasily was assigned to train snipers at formal military schools. His methods, proven in Stalingrad, became standard curriculum. He trained hundreds of snipers who would fight across the Eastern Front, from Ukraine to Poland to Germany itself. He also served in propaganda roles, giving speeches to workers and soldiers, appearing in films about Stalingrad, meeting with foreign journalists. Stalin's government understood that Vasily's story had enormous value for morale and international prestige. Vasily found this frustrating. He was a hunter and soldier, not a celebrity, but he fulfilled these duties with the same discipline he brought to sniping, understanding that his example could inspire others to fight effectively. In 1945, as the war neared its end, Vasily requested and received permission to return to combat operations. Not as a sniper, his vision wouldn't allow it, but as an infantry commander. He commanded a mortar company during the final Soviet push into Germany, participating in the Battle of Berlin. On May 2, 1945, Germany surrendered. Vasily had survived the war. Vasily returned to the Soviet Union as a celebrated war hero. His fame from Stalingrad had only grown during the war years. He was one of the most recognizable faces in the USSR, the humble shepherd who had become a legendary sniper. But like many combat veterans, Vasily found peacetime adjustment difficult. He'd spent years living in the sharpened state of constant combat, where every decision could mean life or death, where his skills directly protected his comrades. In peace, there was no outlet for those instincts, no mission that felt as meaningful as defending Stalingrad. He took a position as director of an engineering school in Kiev, administrative work that utilized his hero of the Soviet Union status, but had nothing to do with hunting or shooting. He married and had children. He lived a quiet, normal life, but he remained haunted by Stalingrad. In interviews years later, Vasily was always willing to discuss sniper tactics, training methods, and military history. But when asked about the psychological experience of killing 225 men, his answers became brief and uncomfortable. One interviewer in 1969 asked, "Do you have regrets about the men you killed?" Vasily's response, "They were fascist invaders destroying my country, killing my people. Every German I killed was one less threat to Soviet citizens. I did what was necessary, but I don't celebrate it. War is not glorious. Killing is not honorable. It's simply sometimes necessary." Another question, did the killing affect you psychologically? Yes. Anyone who says combat doesn't affect them is lying or broken. I had nightmares for years. Still do sometimes. I see faces through the scope. I wake up thinking I'm back in the rubble, but this is the price soldiers pay. We carry these burdens so others don't have to. Vasily Zaitsev died on December 15, 1991, just 6 days before the Soviet Union officially dissolved. He was 76 years old. His death came from complications related to his Stalingrad injuries, which had plagued his health for decades. He was initially buried in Kiev, but in 2006, his remains were reinterred at the Mamayev-Kurgan Memorial Complex in Volgograd, formerly Stalingrad, the site of the battle's fiercest fighting. This was fitting. Vasily had become so identified with Stalingrad that being buried anywhere else seemed wrong. His grave is simple, marked with his name, dates, and title, Hero of the Soviet Union. Visitors often leave flowers and occasionally rifle ammunition, a tribute to the sniper's craft. Military historians have extensively studied Vasily's case to understand what enabled his extraordinary effectiveness. Several factors emerge. 1. Perfect skill foundation. Vasily's childhood hunting education created deep, unconscious competencies that formal military training couldn't replicate in weeks or months. By the time he entered combat, he'd been shooting for over 20 years and had killed hundreds of animals under varied conditions. This foundation was irreplaceable. 2. Adaptive thinking. Vasily didn't try to apply rural hunting techniques directly to urban warfare. Instead, he adapted principles while changing methods. The patience and behavioral reading from hunting translated, but the specific tactics had to be reinvented for Stalingrad's unique environment. 3. Psychological clarity. Unlike some soldiers who struggle with the morality of killing, Vasily had absolute conviction about the war's justice. The Germans were invaders committing genocide across the Soviet Union. Every German he killed saved Soviet lives. This moral clarity prevented psychological paralysis. 4. Systematic methodology. Vasily approached sniping scientifically. He studied patterns, tested techniques, learned from both successes and failures. He didn't rely on instinct alone. He combined intuition with systematic analysis. 5. Teacher's mindset. Vasily's ability to train other snipers effectively demonstrated deep understanding of his craft. People who truly master a skill can explain and teach it. His training method spread his effectiveness far beyond his personal kill count. 6. Calculated risk management. Vasily survived 4 months of combat in Stalingrad, where the average Soviet soldier lasted less than a day. This wasn't luck. It was disciplined risk management. He never took unnecessary risks, always planned escape routes, never let ego override tactical judgment. Today, Vasily Zaitsev is remembered as one of history's most effective combat snipers. His 225 confirmed kills in 103 days represents an extraordinary combat performance, but his legacy extends far beyond personal statistics. Military impact. The Zaitsev method of sniper warfare, emphasizing psychological warfare, patience, behavioral analysis, and hunter's instincts, became standard Soviet doctrine and influenced sniper training worldwide. Modern military sniper schools still study his techniques and tactical principles. Psychological warfare. Vasily demonstrated that individual snipers could create psychological effects disproportionate to their actual casualties. The fear he generated among German forces arguably had greater tactical value than the 225 soldiers he killed. This lesson influenced modern understanding of asymmetric warfare. Cultural impact. Vasily became the archetypal image of the Soviet sniper, the common man using skill, courage, and dedication to defeat better-equipped enemies. His story inspired countless Soviet citizens during the war and remained a source of national pride afterward. Stalingrad symbolic defense. Vasily became inseparable from the Stalingrad narrative. The battle represented the Soviet Union's refusal to surrender despite impossible odds. Vasily personified this resistance, one man holding his ground against an army. Historical lessons. Vasily's story illustrates several enduring principles. Specialized skills from civilian life can translate to military effectiveness. Patience and discipline often trump aggression and quantity. Psychological warfare multiplies physical effects. Systematic thinking succeeds where pure instinct fails. Teaching others multiplies individual effectiveness. It's important to acknowledge that Vasily's story, like many war narratives, contains both verified facts and legendary embellishments. What is absolutely confirmed? Vasily Zaitsev was a real person who served as a sniper in Stalingrad. He achieved